to Exceptional Effort, Mind and Body. We've got Heather, Annemie and Stephen and myself, Damian Andrews, to talk about how to unstress your mind and body, which is a very relevant topic to, especially today with what's happening with coronavirus and the changes that we face. And change is probably one of the key factors that does affect and cause people stress. Or maybe not change itself, because change is the event. The stress is how we react to that. So dealing with stress is a broad topic, and there's many different ways of dealing with stress. Is there anything in particular that stands out for you guys as to, from a stress perspective, of how to unstress yourself?
Well, for me, it's always important to see what is the difference between what happens and what I expect to happen. The larger the gap, the more stress I can experience. So it's always managing my expectations. I'll give you an example. I'm driving a car and I'm just expecting that nobody will cut me off when I'm driving. But when someone is just making a strange maneuver, I'm able to get stressed, because I will say, hey, can't you watch how you drive, for instance? This will give me stress, for instance. This is an example of things that I don't expect to happen. But I can, of course, manage that kind of reactions. That's a simple example of how I can react to stress, things that I don't expect to happen. This is what gives me stress.
Talking about managing it is a new concept for me in recent years, to even realize that you can do that you have some control after your initial response. Then you can choose to stay in your frustration and ruminate on how you didn't expect this, and all those kind of negative feelings and the chemicals that are flooding through your system will continue if you choose to stay in that. But you do have some control after the initial event to change your thinking and get out of that.
I wonder, Heather, from what you talk there about when you say after that initial reaction, how much of that is a learned habitual response? Because I know from some people's perspective, when they'll have an event, using Annemie's example of someone cutting you off with in a car. Some people will naturally get really frustrated and angry and swear, and other people won't even flinch. They'll just wave. And I know from my perspective, I've done both. I used to get really frustrated, and now I've since learnt to when someone cuts me off, I kind of wave. But I just wonder how much of that initial response is a habitual response that we've learnt and can unlearn.
Yeah, it sounds like it does really tie to expectation as well, and what you feel you're entitled to. When I drive around in Toronto traffic, I don't mind the chaos because I fully expect it. I'm not shocked or surprised or insulted when things don't go right, because that's kind of the norm, So it does have a lot to do with what I feel I'm entitled to. I guess if I felt that I was owed a non-eventful trip, then I would be quite angry, but I don't feel that way. So you've changed what you feel you're entitled to, right? And you've learned to roll with these unexpected things.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, is that I did, when someone cut me off. I used to be a very angry person many years ago, and that was part of what I grew up with. And now, when some people wonder if I'm still human because I just don't react to things anymore. And one of my favorite learnings was from a TV show, a movie with Patrick Swayze. It's a movie called Roadhouse, and he's a bouncer in that movie. So he's naturally doing a lot of fighting, but he always talks about being nice. And when the example in the movie's given, the other character says, well, what if someone calls you a name, calls you an asshole, basically, is what he says. And he says, well, Patrick Swayze responds and says, well, that's just two nouns put together to elicit a prescribed response. And I really thought about that and thinking, well, this is the situation that I'm in. It's actually someone eliciting a response, and am I in control or am I being controlled? And that's where it really shifted from me to actually going, well, with that expectation, my expectation is not to be controlled by other people. When I made that switch and thinking, well, the other person's controlling me if I react, then that gave me a lot more power to choose a different response. And then it just became a habitual habit now. Same token, I accidentally cut someone off in my car, and the guy literally reached out the window and was jumping across the road, screaming and yelling. And I kind of just waved back. I just said, look, sorry. And I apologized, just went, sorry. And he kind of went, like, because he didn't get that reaction. So, which I think that helps diffuse the situation with reducing stress in your body as well, being able to have that choice.
Absolutely.
I definitely see that too. Like, I was looking at that just from the standpoint of like how you initially too, like your mood prior to the instance. Like, I'm out on my bike and I get that kind of stuff all the time. Like, I'll have angry drivers come back with the middle throwing the finger out the window, and and it's like just me going like this, or with my hands off my bike, waving back, yeah, I see you, I hope you're having a nice day, or something completely. So it's, for me, a lot of it's dependent upon the mood that I'm in. And 9 times out of 10 I'm in a good mood. It's the one time that obviously if I'm in a damper mood or I've had a rough day, where that will turn into like well, you gave me that, so I'm going to give you it back. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot to be said for your mood prior to, as well as setting the precedent in your mind that you're going to respond in a way that's atypical from what most people would expect you to respond. And it makes you feel better. It makes the other person sometimes settle down or give a confused look, or go on with their merry way. So it's interesting how like your portrayal of what it is that you're perceiving can impact the other person.
That's the whole story. In fact, if you cannot change the situation, you can only change your behavior, how you react to the situation, and then the situation can change. Because when you wave, then the person will change, and then the whole situation can change. That's the nice story about it.
I find you get more of what you focus on as well. So if you want to sit and focus on how frustrated you are in 10 minutes or in half an hour or in 3 hours, you'll still be angry. You'll still be experiencing that full force, right? Because you're choosing to focus on it. So I do think we have to override at some point even our instincts and shift away from that negative focus.
We have to think better than we feel.
Yeah.
Ask the why question. Ask like, why am I feeling this way? Or, like you said, doing something very simple that can trigger, you to think away from what it is that you're perseverating on. I mean, as humans, we're great at perseverating on, certain aspects of life, especially the negative, like where, like you keep beating yourself up and then you're like, why am I beating myself up? Or, you could look off into the distance and, just find something that takes your attention away from that mindset. And that comes to help me a lot too. I mean, there's a lot of points, like going back to like just racing and doing, what it is that I like to do in my spare time. There's a lot of that goes on, like the immediate frustration where where it's a mind game. Like you're playing games with other guys that you're racing with the intent of doing just that. You want to get into their heads so much that you basically convince them that they can't change their mindset. And so you're constantly battling with yourself and asking yourself questions and making sure that you're still in tune with what it is that's going on. Otherwise, if they get into your head, then it's over. Like,
well, today with the coronavirus, there's a lot of stress as well. It induces a lot of anxieties and worries, and how am I going to pay the bills because I maybe lose my job. All these kinds of external factors, they also create a lot of stress for a lot of people.
Just flowing on from that, what was said before, we talked about, I just made a note here, it says how you're feeling beforehand affects how you respond. So if you're generally in a good mood beforehand, then and someone someone does something or something happens, then and if you're in a good mood beforehand or in that strongest mental state, you're able to react a bit better. How about, I mean, from that perspective, how do we maintain that kind of good mood? Is that, a health thing that we can focus on to keep our mood up, or an exercise thing? What are the things that we could do to maintain that mood, that way we respond better in those situations?
Are you, so in answering that further, one thing that I find is when I am in a mood like that and I catch people in in moments just out in public, I could be walking around, or even on a forum, like giving small little compliments to people, because then that further reinforces the positive aspect of my mentality. I mean, that's something that I do personally. Like if I'm in a really good mood, I'll say, hey, I love the shirt that you're wearing. I like how even just with a simple concept like with my girlfriend, like I love the makeup that you're wearing today. Like little genuine compliments that kind of fuel that mood further, and that reinforce that mood in place of what it could be. So that helps me. That's one other way that I look at it. Again, I'm a huge proponent of exercise, but yeah, as far as like for the general whole, like compliments, just little compliments that further do that, and then seeing the response from that person. And and a lot of times somebody could say, oh, I had a horrible day, thanks for doing that, that actually lifted me up, and then that further lifts you up, which then allows you to continue on and to keep exhibiting that. So that way, when that time does come during the day, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, where you come across a frustration or something, you can look back at all those things that just happened, and you're like, wow, I had all of these little moments take place that were fantastic moments, and here I'm presented with this horrible moment, but this horrible moment's far less invasive as a result of all of these previous experiences. And just because it's a bad moment doesn't mean that the next moment can't be a great moment, as seen by what's already taken place. And so it's just creating those opportunities for little positive moments in order to prepare you for those down moments, I guess, if that makes sense.
It'd be good if we could talk about more chronic stress, because we're talking about instances where something bad happens, right? And it's a shock, but a lot of people are dealing with a daily wearing away of their adrenal resilience and their kind of long-term resilience, because they're staying in fight or flight mode on a daily basis.
Yeah.
If you're chronically worried about your finances and your job and your children and your marriage, and this is something that you're dealing with on a daily basis, and then for weeks and months, it starts to wear away on your health. And then if you get a traffic jam or something that is a momentary stress, you just don't have the capacity to handle it, because you've really worn away your health in general, right? So that kind of resiliency, that's something that I have dealt with. And so I had to consciously kind of build back my strength and resilience. For me, that was a matter of studying which nutrients I might be lacking in and which ones I could build up. And as far as supplements and vitamins, I would suggest that for each person, they have to, consult with their doctor. They have to consult with someone who's got a really good understanding of the risks and benefits of those, because you can't just randomly start taking whatever you think. But there are certain things like your amino acids, the B complexes, vitamin D, omega-3, magnesium, ashwagandha for adrenal support, stuff like that, that most people can take without serious health risks, and that can help build back a sense of resilience and daily kind of equilibrium, to even get to that place where you feel kind of steady and calm and strong every day.
Yes, and exactly those supplements that you mentioned, there is this study that has been done after natural disasters, and they gave these supplements like vitamin D, like multimineral, and like vitamin B. These are those standard anti-stress supplements. and they showed that those people who were taking the supplements, they were more resilient than those without the supplements after a disaster.
Yeah.
So it helped them to bounce back more quickly also.
Right.
So typically, yes, the anti-stress like the magnesium, like you said, the supplements can really help to recover more quickly.
So what we don't have is a lot of those really big studies, the double-blind trials and stuff like that for vitamins and herbs and things like that. So you do have to be cautious, but the ones that I listed tend to have solid research behind them and things like St. John's wort and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's just important to know if you're taking anything else, if you're taking other medications that are metabolized by the liver, for instance, that you don't want to take an herb that is also going to tax your liver. So like meeting with a naturopath and someone that knows what they're doing is a great way to find out what's healthy, what's best for you. Yeah.
And then kind of just adding in from my end on breaking the cycle, like because typically it's like a cyclical pattern. And so if you find yourself over and over and over going into that same habitual pattern, you have to find those moments and like seize the opportunities to catch them. So it's like, if you haven't if you've been cooped up in your house and you have the opportunity to suddenly go outside and you're going to the grocery store, it could be like you driving along your merry way to the grocery store and suddenly coming across a park where there's no signs up at this time during COVID where you can access that park. It could be as simple as stopping there and saying, I'm going to stop and appreciate what it is that's out here, for a minute. And so really finding, ways to get out of the typical pattern, because that's, at least from my personal experience, that's in having OCD. That's what, I come to find is when I'm in a cyclical pattern, I have to find ways to break it. Otherwise, I'm basically reinforcing what it is that I'm going into, accompanied with diet, as well as nutritional supplements, like, what have I been eating lately, like you guys, or what have I been taking lately that may or may not be impacting this. But yeah, that's like, I guess my input is, just finding opportunities to get out of it.
We talked recently about forest bathing and the benefits of that, and I know I've come across studies that talk about what is the there's a word for it. There's an actual little chemical that comes out of the trees, and you soak them in, and they improve your mood. And then the same with the ocean, being near water.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
multiple studies that talk about how you really do actually soak that in, and you have chemical changes that are positive being around water.
Yeah, it's very primitive.
Just driving in a lane with trees when you go to work can also relax your brain. Just to
there's multiple levels, because you're seeing it, which makes you happy, but then you're also chemically soaking in something there. And if you're walking around barefoot, you're taking in benefits. There's so many different layers to that.
The smells too, like a lot of people overlook like the ability to smell. Like I appreciate the ability to smell so much more, especially when I'm in the environments like that, because it's like, man, this smells really good. And there's like an abundance of smells and then sounds, like you hear the birds chirping, or, you hear the frogs croaking, or the crickets, or, whatever it is that's in the environment.
It's been so long since I heard and smelled all those things. We got to get out of the city and go soak that stuff up sometimes. We just don't realize how long it's been.
I really encourage everyone to watch a movie which is only visible online. It's called Fantastic Fungi. And you will love it. It's about the woods. It's about the forest and everything which is in there, which is there for our survival. For our species, for the nature, it's fabulous. It's one of the most wonderful movies I've ever seen. It just came out recently. It's called Fantastic Fungi.
I will watch it. It's good that you mentioned fungi, because we were talking about nutrition and the microbiome, which is made up of a myriad of all kinds of happy little bugs. And there are numerous studies on that as well, that if your microbiome is not diverse enough, if it's really depleted or unhealthy, then your brain is directly affected by that. Your mood is affected by that. I think it's something like 90% of your serotonin is made in your gut. So if you can feed your microbiome with prebiotic and probiotic diverse foods and, you know, good veggies and all kinds of stuff like that, you will logically then have a healthier mindset, better mood control, better anxiety management.
Absolutely.
Without a
You
doubt.
will learn in that movie that fungi are the digestive system of the forest.
Yes. Oh, it's like walking through somebody else's stomach.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
it's a fabulous movie. It's a documentary, in fact, but it's extraordinary. It's one of the most beautiful things I've seen. My husband was a forest ranger for many years.
Yeah.
And well, I learned many things already, but even this was an eye opener for him.
I just want to come back to what you were talking before about Heather and Stephen and Annemie. You talked about the chronic stress that people suffer, and then there was about the making the choice of how to react and breaking the cycle. So combining all that together, just from my experience, my work is, a lot of it is, the clients I deal with is a lot of contractual disputes and fights. There's a lot of stress in that, and we're talking in some cases literally tens of millions of dollars on the line. And then going back a few years, I was having personal issues as well with the legal matter, so I had that on top of that. And there'd be days where it'd be constant stress from what I was dealing with work, and then at home, and then making sure my son was able to be put through school, and there was some financial issues, obviously, to do with those personal matters as well. And so there was this stress that just went on for months and months. And I know from that there was times where it just built up. And I'm not going to blame my mum, but she, times she would come and help and visit, which was great. She'd visit and help out, which was fantastic, looking after the little man. But she was a smoker. So I would find at times, because that avenue was there, at times when I was really stressed, I would then just fall into that habit of having a cigarette to de-stress. But then that actually made it worse, because it was a drain on my system. I'd feel more tired. And so I then had to change. I consciously made that, when you talked before about making that choice. So I consciously made a choice that, okay, there's a stress trigger. Now I'm going to react to that differently. I'm either going to go for a walk, I'm going to jump on the cross trainer, I'm going to literally jump up and down on the spot. Was a choice that I made to do as an alternative. And so I found that, and it didn't always work straight away. It was like building a habit. Sometimes you've got to take, sometimes you'll do a couple of steps and then you'll step backwards. And I found that through that process, now when I get to those situations that are that level of stress, I've actually found that because I react differently, rather than, doing something that's eating a lot, because other times I'd go and eat KFC, which is really bad, and I'd have the same reaction. Now I find that when I get to those same chronic, that situation builds up where you've got that chronic stress happening, it doesn't feel as bad anymore, and I react differently as well, because I've made that choice. And I wonder whether, because I've made that choice to react differently, that it's not as stressful anymore either.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because you made that habit, and the brain remembers somehow.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I received as advice, speaking with a really awesome counselor and therapist years ago, was sort of a method for evaluating what's on your plate when you're overwhelmed, when you're anxious, and looking for evidence of what's factual and discarding what has no evidence. So it's like a way of picking through everything that you're carrying and processing. When you're super anxious, what tends to happen is that everything you imagine and everything you fear and all the possibilities are being experienced as though they were real, each and every one, right? So your brain is not really differentiating between what's imaginary and hypothetical and what's actually threatening you.
Yeah.
So this process of going through and writing down what is stressing you out, and then in another column, writing down what is the evidence for that? Is this factual? How do I know that? Is this a valid source? Wherever I've heard this from, should I believe it? Or is this, is this the voice of my mother in my head saying this? Or is this a true thing, right? So you go through each of the things stressing you out, look for the evidence, write down the evidence. And what you will typically find is that you can throw out some of this stuff that you are experiencing for nothing. You're worrying about it for nothing because it's not real.
That's an excellent tip.
Yeah, I was thinking the self-fulfilling prophecy, like that kind of reminded me of that, like the self-fulfilling prophecy and like what's actually going on versus the reality versus what's, going on in your head.
And we're suffering through things that are not even real a lot of the time, which is such a waste of your energy. If you can nip that in the bud really quickly, spend your energy on the stuff that is legitimate and then tackle that, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It goes along with that quote that says, worrying works. 90% of what I worry about never happens. So
there you go. That fits perfectly. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a good strategy, I think, for people to take away, is that when you are feeling stressed, is to actually stop and have a think about it, because your mind does, when under stressful situations, we've been trained from thousands of years that we go into this fight, freeze, or flight mode. And when you're in that mode, you're really operating from your animal brain and really can't think consciously about it. And like you said, Heather, whatever you think about is actually real for you. So even if it might not be an actual real stress, but if you're thinking about it, it's going to feel real. You're going to be stressed about it. So that takeaway for people is to, if you are feeling stressed, just to stop and work out what is real and what's not is a way of reducing that stress or unstressing your mind and body.
Yeah.
What I learned is to yawn every hour. When you yawn, you also stretch somehow the vagus nerve. It's one of the most important nerves that we have. Yes. So because it's linked to the throat. So when we yawn, we stretch the vagus nerve and we relax it. So it's a very cheap way to relax our nervous system. So we yawn just consciously 3 times at least. And then we relax our nervous system.
I don't know if I can make myself yawn. Now I'm going to try.
You can really do it. And then the second thing you can also do is to caress your forearms and to caress your cheeks. This is also a way to relax yourself. So you just hug yourself, let's say. You yawn consciously and you caress your cheeks just once every hour. And it's amazing how it can switch your system back into a relaxed mode.
Yeah. You're reminding me of some of the benefits of facial yoga as well, because a lot of us don't know how we carry tension in our shoulders, tension in our neck and everything, and in your face, around the ears, the temples, the forehead, we carry stress. And when you start to methodically massage that away, you can feel a dramatic difference sometimes.
That's one of the mention that, Heather, like from that perspective, you carry that tension. I know from my perspective in those areas where at times I've had lots of tension or lots of chronic stress, I've actually consciously, noticed my shoulders like this, so I'd actually push them down. And just during the day, I'd just push them down. And I found that had the effect of de-stressing my body. So.
Yeah. It's a typical flight reaction. When you're in the flight, you're ready to run. So it's a typical flight reaction, and it's a stress reaction. That's why people have this tension in the muscles.
Right. And in the jaw, which then also leads to headaches. So I have to check sometimes and see if I'm clenching my teeth. Typically, if I've had a whole lot of coffee, then I will find that I am clenching my teeth throughout the day, and I don't even know it. Like, I'm not unhappy. This isn't kind of an emotional stress. I'm fine mentally, but physically my body is holding some tension and a little too hyped up on caffeine, and then that'll have a physical manifestation in my body being tense.
Can that physical side of things, can that manifest itself into a mental stress, do you think? Or
I wonder. I know that it can certainly make you uncomfortable. It can, you know, it can give you lots of aches and pains and headaches and things like that. And certainly what you're experiencing in your GI system and in your microbiome is affecting your mind and your mood. I do think these things link up.
yeah, I wonder about that when you talked about headaches. I'm just thinking back from the times when I've had headaches, and it has been in a stressful time. And I'm just wondering whether at those times I was actually tensing my body, which was partly causing that. So that's a good point.
You can also throw your hormones off with chronic stress, which also leads to headaches. So there's a lot of different triggers for headaches, but messing with your natural hormonal balance is easy to do if you're chronically stressed and if you're not getting the nutrients that you need.
Yeah, I've heard somewhere that I was talking to, I think it was an occupational therapist. From studies, a lot of our headaches originate actually in our jaw region. And so in relaxing your jaw like entirely or working towards relaxing your jaw, you can actually, in many instances, alleviate, you know, your headache from just simply, you know, just moving it. And like you, Heather, I'll find myself, you know, like either pulling my jaw back or doing things like, you know, obviously with, you know, a little bit too much of this or, you know, whatever it is. And it's just like, you know, until you actually realize you're just like, holy crap, like I've been doing this for the last hour and a half. That's why that's why my body's aching right now. Like, what the heck? And then finally, when you actually see it and you start, you know, relaxing everything, it's like, all right, I'm back to normal. Or you have to wait until you come down from having all the excessive caffeine in your body, which, I mean, that's a whole different story in and of itself. That's not fun to say in the least.
Yeah, I haven't come across any studies that say caffeine is beneficial for stress management and anxiety. I'm looking because I mean, there are health benefits for coffee. There's lots of good stuff you can find about the chemicals in coffee, but stress management is not one of the benefits.
I haven't seen anything either. Yeah, I've only seen performance enhancing benefits or benefits for, you know, being able to
antioxidants and
exactly.
Stuff, but there's a trade-off for sure, and I think people have different sensitivities to this, and at different times in your life that might change. So I'm just basing this anecdotally on myself because I don't know what studies show this, but there are times when I feel fine with coffee. I can drink it all day. I feel great. And there are other times when I have a very low tolerance and it gives me high anxiety. And so that's something about me that's changed that makes it cool or not cool depending on what's going on.
See, and like for my brother, for example, I mean, he can drink coffee right before he goes to bed and he goes to sleep like a baby. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and so like you said, it's different for each person. And so it's interesting to see, you know, like all of the variety of things that go on as a result of things like caffeine and how it can impact anxiety or how it can have an impact on, you know, how it is that you're just functioning.
I have to take into account the diuretic aspect as well, because I had that experience where one of the offices that I was working in, they had this wonderful coffee machine, and it filled up, you know, only filled up because I used a large mug, only half full. So then I'd fill it up with more milk because I was making cappuccino, and then I found that I was having like 5 or 6 of those a day, and but I found I was getting really tired, and what I then something triggered and went, hang on a minute, this is diuretic. I haven't been drinking water. And so I immediately stopped drinking the coffee and my energy just boosted again because I was drinking water instead. So, and as you can see, I mean, I have my glass of water with me generally where I'm drinking water because I find that helps with my health and maintaining a nice level of balance. So.
I never drank coffee in my life. I don't even like the smell of it. I just don't tolerate it at all. But I'm a liquorized tea drinker, so this is my liquorized This is the thing I replace coffee with to get a
liquor and ice.
I'm sorry, liquor.
Yeah, licorice, I think.
Right, licorice.
Okay.
I'll replace my coffee with liquor and ice and see what happens. It will not be as productive, but I will be relaxed.
I guess not. No, it's licorice. It's but you know what it is? It's the root.
Like
so it's liquor. We call it licorice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so licorice. So licorice instead of licorice. So the iced tea is dish.
I'm just pulling your leg. I know.
She's having
I'm
fun.
fine. It's okay. I can handle it.
Yeah. So
is there some last takeaways that you want to share before we wrap it up?
Yes. The one I would like to share is that when we were talking about relaxing the jaw, is when you do meditation. Guided meditation, they always ask you to relax your jaw because you have to breathe. Mm-hmm. And when you have to breathe, you have to relax your jaw. And the second thing I really benefit from is cold showers. Cold showers is really training your nervous system to switch quickly from stress into a relaxed state. So this is the last takeaway I would like to share with all of you.
Yeah. Okay. And I would say, based on what you were just saying about finding yourself having like 6 coffees a day, these things we tend to do because we like a ritual and we like a habit and something to fixate on to relax us. And so for some people, that's overeating, that's sugar. It could be multiple coffees or smoking. And so I think it's helpful if you have a plan mentally, like making that checklist that I mentioned. When you're feeling overwhelmed, can you sit down and write down the top things that are bothering you and evaluate them with that tool? And can you, take a moment to do some facial massage around your jaw, around your temples, and let that become your ritual. If you're doing that 6 times a day or 12 times a day, I think the benefits of that it's only going to be good. It's not going to harm you like a lot of the other habits that we tend to do to de-stress.
And
I was going to say, and then adding in from my end, I guess the takeaway, accompanied with all of your guys' takeaways, is honestly finding every opportunity to break the cycle. Again, I've been going back around to it, just, making the cognizant effort to break the cycle. If you find yourself in a cycle that has you spiraling downhill and to a point where, your health is diminishing, and I agree with, everything that you guys are saying as well. I just wanted to add in, I guess, something a little bit, to our entire piece of another piece of the pie.
Beautiful. And to cap off a couple of other points that I wrote down while we were talking about that was one, that you can actually choose how you react to the stress. So working out what that trigger is and then making a conscious choice to choose to react differently and making that a habit. So because your reactions are learned behaviors and making the choice that you want to react differently and then practicing that until it becomes another habit. And I like coming back to again the yawning, which brings oxygen into your body and actually forces you to calm down because you're soaking your body with oxygen. So there are a couple of other takeaways as well. So thank you everyone for being part of this. This is Exceptional Effort, Mind and Body. That's our show for this week, and we look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks for chatting.
Bye.
Yep.